The coffee in the break room was still warm, but it tasted burnt. I kept drinking it anyway. Across the hall, Marcus laughed, loud, fake, overdone. He always laughed like that when our manager, Diane, walked by. I didn't look up, just listened as his voice faded down the corridor, pretending like I couldn't feel the weight of what I was about to do. After 3 years of covering his screw-ups, I was finally done. We worked at a mid-sized logistics company in Chicago, buried in the customer service division on the 4th floor of a beige building that never turned off the fluorescent lights. I was 34, recently divorced, and clocking in at precisely 7:58 every morning because I didn't trust myself to be late. Marcus, he strolled in whenever. Sometimes it was 8:15, sometimes 9. He always had a story: bus delay, kids' school, locked himself out, girlfriend drama. Diane lapped it up. And for years, I made sure his metrics stayed clean. See, we worked in pairs. Every rep was matched with another to monitor client accounts. If one person was out, the other had to keep things running. Emails, calls, live updates. Our clients were high-volume distributors and they expected answers fast. If Marcus didn't show up, his clients didn't wait. They just yelled at me instead. I didn't mind it at first. We all help each other, right? But somewhere along the way, he stopped even pretending to pull his weight. It started small, maybe a missed callback, a shipping confirmation left unsent. I'd patch it up, explain it away, smooth it over. I didn't want him to get in trouble. I thought maybe he was just going through something. Then one morning, I saw him outside the building at 8:55, sipping an energy drink in his car. I tapped on his window. "You coming in?" He didn't even flinch, just smiled and said, "Give me 5, man, gotta finish this call." I went upstairs. He walked in 10 minutes later, empty-handed. That was the first time I realized I wasn't helping anymore, I was enabling. Diane had a thing for Marcus, not romantic, but soft. He had that casual charisma. Flashed his teeth, called her D like they were old friends. He could spill a whole crate of orders, forget to follow up with a $1 million vendor, and still somehow walk out with a pat on the back. Meanwhile, I got CC'd on follow-up emails if I took my lunch break 10 minutes late. And Marcus figured that out real fast. He started forwarding stuff to me directly. "Can you just knock this out? I'm slammed." Or, "Hey bro, I missed this call, can you recap it for me?" Sometimes he didn't even ask. I just open the shared inbox and see his messages unopened, flagged red. By last November, I was doing about 60% of his work. It got worse during peak season. December was chaos, freight delays, weather backups, holiday vendors panicking. We were pulling 10-hour days, no overtime, no thanks. I didn't see Marcus for almost 4 straight mornings. He'd clock in late, slide in with a grin and say, "Yo, appreciate you holding it down." And I kept doing it. Because I was tired, because I was scared of rocking the boat, because I didn't want to look like the guy who couldn't handle a little extra. But mostly, because I didn't want Diane to see me as a complainer. Then came the missed shipment. A critical client, a regional grocery distributor, had a time-sensitive order for their New Year's Eve push. Marcus was supposed to confirm the pallet delivery with the carrier by noon Friday. He didn't. The client called at 5, furious. I wasn't even on that account anymore, but I stayed late trying to salvage it. Called the carrier, ran interference with the warehouse, even drafted an apology email for Diane to review. I left at 7:30 that night, hands shaking, eyes sore. That weekend, I made a decision. No more cover. If Marcus missed something, he'd have to clean it up himself. The first Monday of the new year, I started marking everything assigned to Marcus in the system. Every missed reply, every flagged call, every unconfirmed shipment, his name went on it. I didn't explain it to him, I just stopped fixing it. By Thursday, Diane called me into her office. She shut the door gently. "Is something going on with you and Marcus?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" She pulled up a report on her screen. "I've noticed a dip in team response time this week, and a few clients have complained. Marcus said you've been dropping the ball." My ears buzzed. "Sorry." She scrolled. "These 3 accounts, you were the secondary, right?" I leaned in. The timestamps didn't lie. I hadn't touched any of those threads in weeks. "I wasn't the lead on those," I said carefully. "Marcus was." She tilted her head. "Well, he says you haven't been pulling your weight, that you've been slow, unresponsive, that he's been covering for you." I just stared. I don't know what I expected in that moment. Maybe shock, maybe anger, maybe something dramatic, but what I felt was something colder. A quiet click. Like a lock sliding into place. He'd been blamming me for months. and I had no idea. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every moment, every shift I covered, every client I calmed down, every hour I worked past closing while Marcus ghosted his inbox, all while he was planting the narrative that I was the weak link. I opened my laptop at midnight and started pulling reports. If I was going down, I wasn't going quietly. It took me 3 hours that night to pull the reports. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for at first, just that I needed evidence, something to show that I hadn't been slacking, that I'd been covering for someone who was now throwing me under the bus without blinking. But the more I dug, the more I realized this wasn't a recent thing, this wasn't new. Marcus had been laying the groundwork for this since the fall. I started with our ticket logs. Each support request came with a timestamp and an assigned responder ID. I filtered by account, then by month, September to January. It was all there. I handled nearly 80% of the replies on the shared accounts, most of which technically weren't even mine anymore. I forwarded those to my personal email. Then I moved on to the client feedback survey responses. We had a simple system. After each resolved ticket, the system would send a customer satisfaction form, 1 to 5 stars. I pulled Marcus's average, 2.9. Mine was 4.7. I forwarded those too. Then I found something that made my stomach drop. An email thread from October buried under the vendor correspondence folder. It was between Marcus and Diane. Subject: concerns about team dynamics. His words were polished, too polished. Hey D, just wanted to flag a few things I've noticed on the floor. I'm not trying to make a big deal of it, but I've been picking up a lot of slack from Alex lately. I think he might be going through something. He seems distracted, and I've been quietly covering so it doesn't affect team output. Quietly covering. He made himself the hero in my story. That next morning, I walked into work early, not for Marcus, not for the clients, for me. I didn't say a word to him when he showed up late again, sauntering in with a half-eaten muffin and some nonsense about his Wi-Fi being out. I just watched him sit down, log in, and ignore the flagged messages piling in our shared inbox. 10 minutes later, Diane sent me a calendar invite. One-on-one check-in. Today, 10:30 a.m. Location: her office. My stomach clenched. I clicked accept. At 10:29, I knocked on her door. Come in, she said, barely looking up. I closed the door behind me and sat across from her, heart in my throat. Her office always smelled faintly of cinnamon gum and printer paper. She leaned back, fingers tented. So, she said, I wanted to get ahead of this before it becomes a performance issue. I raised an eyebrow. A performance issue? She nodded. Marcus has brought some concerns to my attention again. He says there's been a pattern of disengagement, that he's been stepping up to keep the team's reputation intact. And this week, I've noticed. I reached into my bag, pulled out a manila folder, and slid it across the desk. She paused, then opened it. Inside, printouts of ticket logs, client satisfaction surveys, email chains, and a spreadsheet I built overnight. Every call I'd taken, every task I'd finished, every shift I covered, all of it color-coded and sourced. She flipped through in silence. Her face didn't move. I know this looks petty, I said, and maybe it is, but I need you to see the truth. She set the folder down. How long have you been tracking this? Since last night, I admitted, but the data from months ago, I didn't think I'd ever need it. I thought we were a team. Diane exhaled slowly. Why didn't you come to me sooner? Because I thought covering for him was the right thing, I said. I thought if I just worked harder, it would even out. I didn't realize he was twisting the story. She tapped her nails on the desk. Let me look this over more closely, she said. I'll follow up. I nodded and left, not trusting myself to speak. Back at my desk, Marcus was watching YouTube on his second monitor. He flipped tabs when I walked by. Yo, he said like nothing was wrong. You catch the Bears game last night? I sat down. Didn't answer. The silence between us stretched for the next week. Marcus kept up the performance, smiling at Diane, cracking jokes by the printer, loud laughing in the hall, but he could feel the shift. I wasn't responding to his forwarded emails, wasn't smoothing over his missed calls. I just let the red flags pile. And Diane. She stopped smiling at him quite so much. On Wednesday, she called a full team meeting. Midday, no agenda. We gathered in the conference room, a sterile space with one flickering light and a crooked whiteboard that no one used. Marcus leaned back in his chair, legs crossed like he already owned the room. Diane stood at the head of the table. She didn't hold any papers. "I want to address something directly," she said. "I've received some conflicting reports about workload distribution and communication breakdowns." The room stilled. Marcus tilted his head. "Oh. I've been reviewing internal data," Diane continued. "It's clear that certain team members have taken on disproportionate responsibilities over the past quarter. That's not sustainable, nor is it fair." She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. Marcus shifted in his seat. "We're rebalancing account assignments effective Monday," she said, "and I'll be conducting one-on-ones with each of you to get direct feedback. Anonymous surveys will follow." Someone coughed. No one spoke. Marcus finally said, "Hey Dee, I think I know what this is about. If this is about me stepping in for Alex, I'm happy to keep doing it. I've always had his back." Diane didn't even blink. "I think it's time we let everyone speak for themselves." That night I stayed late again, not to cover for Marcus, just to clean my desk. I didn't know where this was heading, but for the first time in months I didn't feel trapped. I felt clear. And clarity was something I hadn't felt in a long time. The morning after Diane's announcement, Marcus showed up 15 minutes early. That alone would have raised eyebrows, but what made it weirder was that he brought donuts. A full pink box from Stan's, still warm. He dropped them on the breakroom counter like it was a peace offering, clapped his hands together and said, "All right, team, new year, new energy." I watched from my desk as he worked the room, offering pastries, checking in on people he normally ignored, even complimenting Jasmine on her haircut, which she'd gotten 2 weeks ago. He was all charm and volume and energy, like he was trying to smother the office with good vibes before anyone could question his version of the story. I didn't touch a donut. Diane scheduled my second one-on-one for that afternoon. I came prepared again, more ticket logs, a few emails from clients who had directly thanked me for stepping in, and a full breakdown of hours logged per account, side by side with Marcus. It was tedious and maybe overkill, but I wasn't leaving anything to chance. When I walked in, Diane looked tired, not irritated, just heavy, like she'd been carrying too many things and hadn't put any of them down in weeks. She motioned for me to sit. "I appreciate the data," she said right away. "I went through most of it." "Thank you." "And I spoke with Marcus." I waited. She leaned back. "He denies blaming you directly, says you misunderstood." I almost laughed. "Did he deny writing that email from October?" "No," she admitted, "but he claims it was a misunderstanding, that he never meant for it to reflect badly on you." My jaw clenched. "Diane," I said quietly, "he spent months telling you I was slipping while I covered for him. If I hadn't brought the numbers, would you have believed me?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she said, "Why didn't you document this earlier?" "Because I thought we were a team," I said, "and because I thought you'd notice." That landed harder than I expected. She closed her eyes for a second. "I missed it, that's on me." I nodded. "I'm not asking for him to get fired, I just want it to stop." She opened a drawer, pulled out a notepad, and started scribbling. "We're restructuring the team. You'll no longer be paired with Marcus. You'll take on the West Coast logistics accounts. We need someone dependable on those." I raised my eyebrows. "That's a big deal." "They're high volume," she said, "and high pressure, but they've asked for you by name a few times. You've got credibility." I sat back, letting that sink in. "And Marcus?" I asked. "He'll stay on the mid-tier accounts," she said, "under observation." Translation: she was giving him enough rope. Back at my desk, I found Marcus standing over my chair. He turned as I approached, holding one of my printed reports in his hand. "Hey," he said too casually, "saw this left on the printer." I took it from him without a word. He smiled. "So that's how we're doing this now." I looked him in the eye. "I stopped doing your job, that's all." He scoffed. "You make it sound so noble." "No," I said, "just overdue." He leaned in a little. "You know you're not perfect either." "Never said I was," I replied, "but I own my work and my mistakes." He stood there a beat too long, then stepped back. "Watch your back," he muttered. "Why?" I asked. "You already stabbed it." He didn't respond. The new accounts were brutal. West Coast vendors meant early mornings, sometimes 6 a.m. Zoom calls. They were demanding, detail-oriented, and absolutely allergic to mistakes. But they also noticed when things went right. One client even sent me a Starbucks gift card for keeping her sane during a particularly bad vendor delay that had never happened before. For the first time in a long time, I felt like the work I was doing mattered. And it wasn't just me who noticed the shift. People started stopping by my desk more often, not to dump work but to ask for input. Jasmine asked me to proof her outbound vendor script. Rico wanted help building out his tracking spreadsheet. Even Diane forwarded a few executive summaries my way for polish. Marcus, meanwhile, started disappearing during lunch. Not officially, of course, but I noticed he wasn't around during crunch time, that his presence got quieter. He looked at me differently now, less smug, more guarded. I'd become inconvenient to him, harder to gaslight, harder to use. That made him dangerous. The real twist came 2 weeks later. It was a Thursday morning, freezing cold, ice on the windows. I came in early as usual, logged in, opened the team dashboard, and found a flagged message from HR. Subject: inquiry regarding performance concerns, confidential. My stomach dropped. The message was brief. We've received a report about team dynamics and potential misconduct in client communication. As part of standard procedure, we're conducting interviews with involved parties. Please confirm your availability for a 15-minute call today. I sat there frozen. Had Marcus gone over Diane's head? Or was this something else entirely? I messaged Diane immediately. She responded 10 minutes later. Yes, I'm aware. HR's looped in across the board to ensure transparency. I'll explain more when I can, just be honest. It wasn't exactly reassuring. The call with HR happened that afternoon. A woman named Carla led the conversation, calm, clinical, polite. She asked about Marcus, about work distribution, about any personal tension. I answered everything honestly. I didn't embellish. I didn't speculate. I just laid out the facts, including the reports I'd already given Diane. Then came the curveball. Have you ever accessed another team member's inbox without authorization? My mouth went dry. No, never. Carla nodded. Type something. Have you forwarded any internal documentation to your personal email? I paused. Yes, only to back up what I brought to Diane, not confidential info, just metrics. She scribbled something else. Okay, she said, that helps. We're still gathering context. Appreciate your cooperation. I logged off and sat there, feeling like I'd just stepped onto a trapdoor. At 5:15 that evening, as the office emptied out, Diane stopped by my desk. You okay? She asked quietly. I shrugged. Define okay. She sighed. HR got an anonymous report accusing you of harassment, saying you've been undermining Marcus and creating a hostile environment. I stared at her. You don't believe that, right? She shook her head. I've seen the work and I've talked to people, but HR still has to do their due diligence. I looked away. He's trying to flip the story again. Yes, she said, and this time it's not just office gossip, it's an official investigation. That weekend, I didn't open my laptop. Didn't check emails, didn't refresh Slack. I just sat in my apartment, watching the radiator click and hiss while my mind spun. Was I really about to get written up, or worse, because I stopped being used? It wasn't just betrayal anymore, it was something darker, a calculated move, an escalation. And I wasn't sure I had the energy for what came next. Monday morning hit like a punch to the gut. Even the air in the office felt different, tight, suspicious, over-filtered. People looked up a little longer when I walked past. Smiles didn't last as long. Someone had clearly been talking. I sat at my desk, logged in, and tried to act normal, but I felt it, that creeping paranoia. That quiet dread that follows you around when your reputation is under siege and nobody will say it out loud. Then Jasmine pinged me. Hey, just wanted to say, I know what this is really about, you're not crazy. That one line nearly cracked me open. By 11 a.m., my HR follow-up had been scheduled. Another Zoom, another faceless voice asking me to relive the past few months in bullet points. Carla was there again, joined by someone new, James, apparently a senior HR rep stepping in for impartiality. The tone this time was colder. We've spoken with several team members, James said. There are some concerns about your communication tone and the documentation you collected, specifically regarding how certain information was handled. My mouth was dry. I was never given direct access to Marcus's emails. Everything I reviewed was either in our shared inbox or sent directly to me. He didn't nod, didn't react. And forwarding ticket logs to myself, that was to support my case. There's no client data in those files. Carla finally jumped in. We understand that now, but we still need to complete our review. We appreciate your transparency. They logged off. And I just sat there watching my reflection in the black screen, wondering how many versions of me were being whispered about down the hall. I walked to the break room to get water, just to move. Marcus was already there, leaning against the counter, texting. He looked up when I walked in and gave me that same insufferable grin. HR keeping you busy? I didn't answer. He chuckled, man, you really thought they were gonna take your side, huh? I turned to leave. But he kept talking. You overplayed it, Alex. You should have just let things cool down. Now you look like the guy who can't let stuff go. I stopped at the door. You're projecting, I said. He raised an eyebrow. You can't stand the idea that people might see through you, I said. So you flip it, make me look like the bitter one, but deep down you know you've been coasting, and it's finally catching up. His jaw tightened. You talk a lot for someone hanging by a thread. I stared him down. I'd rather fall with a clean conscience than rise with a lie. He laughed once, bitter and short. Let's see if HR agrees. That afternoon, I got a Slack message from Jasmine again. Heads up, Rico just got pulled into HR too. He's backing your side. Then another. Also, pretty sure Diane submitted a counter statement on your behalf. She didn't say it, but the timing lines up. It wasn't over. But I wasn't alone. 2 days later, Diane called me into a private meeting room, small, quiet, no windows. She closed the door, lowered her voice. HR's wrapping up, they're leaning neutral. I frowned. Neutral. They can't prove intent. Your documentation technically wasn't policy violating, but it treaded close. They don't want to escalate it, so they're recommending mediation. Between me and Marcus. She nodded. I shook my head. That's insulting. I know. I did his job for a year. He flipped the narrative. I defended myself with data, and now we both get let's work it out. She sighed. It's HR. Their job is to make problems disappear, not pick sides. I leaned back in the chair. So what happens if I refuse? Nothing officially, but it makes you look combative. I closed my eyes. Of course it does. The mediation was scheduled for Friday. Small conference room, 3 chairs, 1 HR rep in the middle. Marcus and I sat on opposite ends like strangers at a train station. The air was so still it felt fake. James from HR cleared his throat. Let's keep this constructive. Marcus jumped in first. I just want to say I never meant to create tension. I thought I was helping. If there were misunderstandings, I regret that. I looked at him, no apology, just vague fog. James turned to me. Alex. I took a breath. I want to be clear, this wasn't a misunderstanding. Marcus lied about covering for me when I was the one doing the work. He manipulated Diane. He went to HR with a fabricated claim, and I defended myself. James scribbled something. Marcus turned in his chair. That's your version. It's not a version, I snapped. It's facts. You tried to get ahead of a story you knew was falling apart, and now you're hopping. HR won't want to deal with the paperwork. James raised a hand. Let's keep the tone professional. Marcus exhaled dramatically. Look, man, if this is about pride. This is about trust, I said, which you burned. James finally cut in. Here, what we're proposing, you'll both be placed on separate accounts permanently. No more shared responsibilities, no overlapping clients. We want to avoid further friction. I laughed under my breath, so he gets away with it. James stiffened. There will be notes in both files. Marcus didn't even blink. After the meeting, I stepped outside for air. Snow was falling, thin, slow flakes drifting sideways in the wind. I leaned against the building wall, hands in my pockets, and let the cold bite through my sleeves. A few minutes later, Diane joined me. Not a satisfying outcome, she said. No, but you're still here, that matters. I didn't respond. She looked at me almost apologetic. Some things in corporate life aren't fair, but not being fair doesn't make them false. Everyone sees the shift now. Maybe HR won't say it, but people know who pulls the weight. I looked out at the parking lot. He's not gonna stop, you know. Then we outlast him, she said. 2 weeks passed. No more HR follow-ups, no new calendar invites. Marcus kept his head down. He didn't bring donuts. He didn't laugh loud in the halls. He stopped showing up early. But what mattered more was this. I started sleeping again. I walked into work without knots in my stomach. Clients kept requesting me. And one morning, Diane forwarded me an internal posting. Team lead West Coast Division, internal applications only. At the bottom, she added, "You've earned this. Let me know if you want me to write the referral." I stared at it for a long time. Maybe the system hadn't given me justice. But it had given me one thing. A way out from under him. I didn't respond to Diane's message right away. The internal team lead posting sat in my inbox for 3 days, unread but not ignored. Every time I hovered over it, my chest tightened. Not because I didn't want the role. I did. I just wasn't sure I deserved to want anything after everything that had happened. I wasn't used to being seen. For a long time, I was just the guy who kept things together behind the curtain. No drama, no fuss, no spotlight. I didn't know how to be the person who stepped forward and said, "Yeah, I'll take the lead." But then I thought about everything I'd been through. About how easy it would have been to just let Marcus keep using me, about how much energy it took to stop being silent, and about how rare it was to be given the chance to move up on your own terms. I opened the email, clicked apply, and didn't look back. The interview was less formal than I expected. It was held in one of the glass meeting rooms on the 6th floor, neutral territory, away from my usual desk, away from Marcus. Diane sat across from me, along with a senior director from California I'd only met once over Zoom. She asked the usual questions: team dynamics, conflict resolution, client management, but I could tell she was more interested in how I handled pressure. "How do you approach accountability within a team?" she asked near the end. I didn't hesitate. Quietly, I said, "You don't need to make noise to make change. You just need to be honest and consistent." Diane didn't say a word, but she didn't need to. She remembered everything. The offer came 3 days later. More pay, better hours, a title that actually meant something. I'd be supervising 2 smaller teams on the West Coast accounts, rotating between remote and in-office work. No Marcus, no shared inbox, no more cleaning up someone else's mess while they smiled through it. Just me, my work, my name on the results. I accepted. I didn't tell Marcus right away. But word travels fast. Within a week, he stopped looking me in the eye. The office was already shifting around us. New org chart, new assignments, new team leads being looped in. One morning, I passed him near the elevator, and he just nodded like I was a stranger. I was fine with that. You don't owe anything to someone who saw your kindness as a weakness. My first day as lead was quiet, just how I liked it. I met my new reports over Zoom, walked them through expectations, made space for questions. No speeches, no fake smiles, just structure and clarity and a promise: I won't ask you to do what I wouldn't do myself. They responded better than I expected. It felt real. Grounded. Earned. Then came the moment I didn't see coming. 3 weeks into the role, I was working late, old habit, just tidying up reports, reviewing performance metrics. The office was mostly dark. The cleaners had already come through. And then I heard a knock on the glass door. It was Marcus. I didn't get up. He walked in slowly, hands in his pockets. He looked smaller now, not physically, but worn down. "Hey," he said, "got a minute?" I closed my laptop. "Sure." He sat across from me. "I heard about the promotion." I nodded. Wanted to say congrats. I didn't reply. He shifted. "Look, I know we haven't exactly been on good terms. Because you made sure of that." "Yeah," he said quietly, "I guess I did." Silence. Then he added, "I thought I could get away with it, that if I made you look small enough, I'd look important by default." I raised an eyebrow. "You're saying that out loud?" "I'm tired," he admitted, "and you earned it, the role, the respect, all of it." I waited for the punchline. He looked up. "I'm thinking of transferring, Denver branch, my cousin works there." I shrugged. "That's your call." He stood. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry." And for the first time, he actually looked like he meant it. I didn't forgive him, not completely, but I nodded. Sometimes that's enough. The months that followed were the most stable I'd had in years. Work made sense. I wasn't chasing fires anymore. I was building systems that kept them from sparking in the first place. My team thrived. One of my junior reps got nominated for Employee of the Month. Another pulled in a top-tier vendor partnership. I started getting looped into strategy meetings with regional leads. And more than that, I felt good. Not just because I had a title, but because I had finally stepped out from behind the curtain. One night, Diane called me into her office. She handed me a sticky note. "What's this?" I asked. She smiled. "That's the name of someone in finance who's been getting covered for way too long." I smirked. "You want me to take a look?" "No," she said. "I want you to teach your team how to take a look. Sometimes people say the system is broken. But I've learned something harder. The system is fine with being broken so long as it's quiet. If you're the guy who keeps patching the leaks, no one notices you until you stop. And when you finally stop, it's not always justice that follows. But if you stay honest, stay loud enough to be heard, and calm enough to be believed, you can still build something better. Even if it takes a while. Even if it nearly breaks you first. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.